a segment we're calling special occasions, and it's basically we're looking at uh, a situation you might be in and what recipes might be good for that. Of course, one recipe might do well in many situations. Some recipes will do better than others, and we're not telling you that you have to use these recipes, but just suggesting if you find yourself in these situations, maybe this is one to consider. So what we're looking at today is a situation where you're doing portraits. So these are recipe for portrait photography. And in each of these special occasions, we're going to look at three film simulation recipes. And if you find yourself in the situations where you might want to find a recipe that will work good, these are the ones we're suggesting you try. And you can also share with us the pictures if you do use these recipes in these situations. Share with us your pictures that you captured. The first one is outdoor sunny. If the sun is shining, you're outside and you're doing portrait photography, this is a recipe that I definitely recommend. It's a Kodak Portra 400 V2. Kodak Portra 400 V2. There are several people who are professional photographers who do portrait photography for a living that use these recipes, that use the Kodak Portra 400 V2 recipe for that. It works great when the sun is shining and you're wanting a really warm picture. If you're using vintage lenses, it's really good for that as well. And so we have it up here on Nathalie's phone, and you can see the recipe. I wanted to, if you don't mind, scrolling down just a little bit so you can see where you click to go to the website, all the way to the bottom, and tap on that open website.
Okay. And then when you click on it, you get through to the website. This is the article on Ritchie's blog that relates to this simulation. So there is awesome information, write-up about some background information. You vary what you're writing about in the recipe, but there's always some introduction, and then you have sample images and also the actual recipe and the settings that you need to put in your camera.
I very specifically want to keep scrolling and to find a certain picture that's in the article here. Keep going, and I'll tell you where it is. It should be coming. It's right there. So if you stop there, there's a photographer in those pictures. His name is Julian Jari, and he's a great cinematographer. Look him up on YouTube. Look him up on Instagram as well. And this recipe was created with his help. He actually shot some Kodak Portra 400 film and then used an X100V camera to make a comparison side by side to help create a recipe that was accurate to his film. Of course, film can look different depending on how it's shot, developed, and scanned and that kind of stuff. So that's why there can be several recipes with the same name. There's a different Kodak Portra 400 recipe that was also created by comparing film side by side with a different photographer. But this recipe is intended to look like his Kodak Portra 400 pictures. If you find yourself in a sunny outdoor setting and you're wanting a warm portrait recipe, definitely try Kodak Portra 400 V2. And so now let's move on to the next one. The next recipe was created specifically because I was going to be taking pictures of people. And it's good for sunshine, but I found it also very good for in a situation where you're outside and in the shade, or maybe it's overcast or something like that, not bright sunlight. I think Kodak Portra 400 V2 doesn't do as well in these kind of situations, but this recipe does very well when the sun's not shining bright, when it's in the shade and that kind of stuff. You can get a very natural look. It's colorful, but not too colorful. And this is a recipe that I personally use in those situations.
Yes, it looks absolutely phenomenal. And what I
And
would
it's
like
just
to
simply
add,
called Pro Nig High is the name of the recipe.
yes, and if you have the app open, you can use the opportunity to write yourself a little note in there so that you can, have crib notes of all the wisdom that Richie shares with us so that we know when we are looking for this recipe, all the things, all the situations, and everywhere where this recipe is particularly useful.
Hmm.
So this is
So then,
what I've done for myself as well.
yeah, the notes section is really a great place to put different things that you want to say about a recipe, when to use it, even keep track of what pictures you took while you had while you're using the recipe and that kind of stuff. So hopefully you
Yes.
guys are using that notes feature and find it useful. The third situation here for portraits, we'll get to that, is indoor, and I kind of mean indoor under artificial lights. When the lighting conditions are not real ideal and it wouldn't normally be a good time. You can use this recipe in many, situations, but I think where it just really shines is in indoor, maybe mixed light or just kind of weird artificial light. It's the best recipe for that for sure. And it's called Fujicolor Super HG V2. So Fujicolor Super HG V2. That's the name of the recipe.
Yes, I
I
absolutely
think
love
it.
this photograph here, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that you like if I had used, for example, the Kodak Portra 400 V2 for that picture, it would be extremely yellow. But this recipe cuts through the crazy light and produces a very nice image.
That's awesome. Thank you. That is fabulous.